You know what people love to do? Underestimate things. They underestimate what they're capable of. They underestimate how far a small step can take them. They even underestimate how powerful something small can become if it's nurtured, believed in, and given attention. I want to talk about potential, about the fact that you might look at yourself, your idea, your confidence, your body, your situation, and think this isn't enough, and I'm here to tell you you're dead wrong. Growth isn't loud, it's not instant, and it sure as hell doesn't always look impressive in the beginning. That little spark of an idea, that moment of courage, that quiet whisper telling you to go for it. It looks small, but when you give it energy, focus, and attention, it becomes big. This is the part where most people quit. They look at what they have right now and think, it's not big enough, it's not strong enough, I'm not ready. But what you don't realize is that everything begins in a small, raw, unrefined form. Confidence, skill, passion, they start small. But when nurtured, they grow beyond what anyone ever expected. Do you want something in your life to grow? Stop shaming the start. Stop doubting your beginning. Instead, show up, feed it, believe in it. Because that's the secret. What you invest in will expand. What you nurture will transform. And it doesn't matter who doubts you. What matters is if you stop underestimating your own power. What matters is whether you'll keep showing up for what you believe in even when it still looks too small to matter. Because let me tell you something, small things become massive when you give them the right energy. So the next time you look at your potential and think, this isn't much, remember, all it takes is belief, energy, and time. That's when the transformation happens. People often underestimate small beginnings. It's one of the most common and destructive habits people fall into, often without even realizing it. We live in a world that celebrates the big, the loud, the finished product. We look at success stories and only see the highlight reel, the championship trophy, the viral moment, the booming business, the best-selling book. What we don't see is how small all of it started, because those beginnings, they weren't glamorous, they weren't impressive, they didn't look like much at all. That's the trap. When we look at our own lives, we compare our tiny, awkward, early efforts to someone else's fully formed result. And that comparison poisons our belief in what's possible. You sit down to write and only manage a messy paragraph. You try a new skill and feel clumsy. You launch an idea and barely get a reaction. So you tell yourself, this isn't going to work. It's not enough. And that right there is the moment when most people walk away. But what we forget is that every big thing started as something small. The author with a best-selling book, they started with a single line that probably didn't even make it into the final version. The successful entrepreneur, they launched a version of their product that looked nothing like what they're selling now. That speaker who inspires thousands, they once spoke to a room of 5 people and stumbled through every word. Small beginnings are not just normal, they're necessary. They are the gateway, the training ground, the place where you learn, build, and refine. But we don't treat them that way. We treat small as weak. We treat it as failure and we get embarrassed by it. We rush to hide the fact that we're starting out. We don't post our early work. We don't tell people what we're trying to do. We keep everything under wraps until it's perfect, which means we never actually share anything at all. That perfectionism, it's just fear in disguise, fear of judgment, fear of looking silly, fear that we'll never be good enough. There's also this internal pressure we put on ourselves, like we have to be amazing right out of the gate. But no one is. Not the best athlete, not the most brilliant thinker, not even the most charismatic leader. They were all beginners once, and most of them probably sucked at first. What made them different wasn't natural talent. It was their ability to keep going, to trust the process, and to believe that something small could grow into something meaningful. We also underestimate small beginnings because we expect instant results. We live in a culture that thrives on immediacy. If we don't see proof right away, we assume it's not working, but progress is often invisible at first. Seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. Muscles build slowly and subtly. Confidence grows one tiny decision at a time. That's the real work, and it doesn't always look like success at first. Think about the first time you tried something totally new. Maybe it was learning a language, picking up an instrument, speaking in public, or starting your own business. You were probably awkward, unsure, maybe even terrified, but every single time you showed up and tried again, you grew. Even if the growth was so small you couldn't see it. That's what makes small beginnings powerful. They carry within them the momentum that leads to greatness. If you keep showing up. Another reason we dismiss small beginnings is because we care too much about what other people think. We want to appear successful, polished, in control, but the truth is everyone respects growth more than perfection. People connect to effort, not just achievement. And when you let yourself be seen starting out, when you own your mess and keep moving anyway, you become unstoppable. You stop needing approval and start building something real. You also gain confidence, not from pretending to be further along than you are, but from proving to yourself that you're willing to start, no matter how small. That decision to begin is one of the most powerful you can make. It's an act of courage. It's a statement that says, I believe this matters even if it's not big yet, because everything big was once not big. Everything strong was once untested. Everything known was once unseen. Growth requires consistent belief and energy. It's not something that just happens because you want it. It doesn't arrive on its own, and it doesn't care how passionate or excited you are on day one. Growth is something you earn, something you feed, something you fight for, and if you're not consistent, if you don't show up again and again with belief and energy, it stalls, it dies, it fades back into nothing. That's the reality most people don't want to hear. They want the shortcut, the big moment, the breakthrough. But breakthroughs are built on boring, repetitive effort that no one sees. Belief isn't a one-time event. It's not something you feel once and then carry with you forever. It's something you have to choose over and over, especially on the days when you don't feel like it, when the results are slow, when the work is frustrating. When the people around you don't see what you're trying to build. Belief in yourself, your path, your idea. That's the fuel. That's the thing that keeps you in the game long enough to grow into your potential. But it takes effort to hold on to it. You have to protect it. You have to actively generate it every single day, especially when things feel uncertain. Energy is just as essential, and no, this doesn't mean being hyper or constantly busy. Energy is attention, it's focus, it's the intention you bring to your actions. It's how you show up, how deeply you care, how willing you are to push forward even when you're tired or uninspired. The truth is, your energy tells the world what you believe about yourself. If you give something your full attention, your full effort, it says, this matters. That message matters even more than the outcome, because it sets the tone for everything that follows. Energy is how you signal your seriousness. Without it, your ideas stay ideas, your goals remain wishes, your growth never gains traction. People often get caught in the trap of being consistent only when they feel motivated. They'll show up when things are going well. They'll put in the energy when they're getting results, but that's not real consistency. That's convenience. Real consistency means showing up when it's boring, when it's hard, when no one's clapping. When the voice in your head says, this isn't working, it means choosing belief over doubt, choosing movement over perfection, choosing effort over comfort. That's where growth comes from, not in the dramatic moments, but in the quiet ones where no one's watching. It's easy to believe when people are supporting you. It's easy to have energy when everything feels aligned, but those moments are rare. The majority of the journey is built in solitude, in repetition. In faith, and if you don't learn to generate your own belief and direct your own energy, you'll always depend on external motivation. You'll wait for a sign, for permission, for proof that you're on the right path. And by the time it shows up, if it ever does, you'll already have talked yourself out of trying. Growth is slow, that's just the truth. It's not always dramatic, and it rarely happens in the way you expect. It sneaks up on you. You notice it only when you look back and realize how far you've come. But it only happens if you've been consistent. It only happens if you keep pouring in belief and energy even when there's no immediate payoff. That's the uncomfortable part. That's the test. Can you keep going when it's not exciting? Can you keep believing when you have no visible reason to? Can you stay in motion when the results aren't showing up yet? Most people give up not because they weren't capable, but because they ran out of belief and stopped giving energy. They stopped treating their goal like it mattered. They started looking for other things to chase instead of building momentum with what they already had. And they ended up stuck, not because of their lack of ability, but because they didn't stay in the game long enough for the growth to catch up. If you want something to grow, whether it's your skills, your mindset, your career, or your confidence, you have to feed it. You have to believe in it even when no one else does. You have to give it your time, your focus, your persistence. That's the trade. That's the investment. You plant the seed, but belief and energy are what keep it alive. Not once, but every day. Not when it's convenient, but when it's necessary. Because growth doesn't respond to occasional effort. It responds to steady, determined, intentional action that refuses to stop. Everything powerful starts unrefined and small. That's a truth most people overlook because they are too focused on outcomes. They want the polished version, the smooth performance, the impressive numbers. But they forget that everything that's now powerful, respected, or successful once looked awkward, undeveloped, and even unimpressive. Nothing begins at its final form. The first draft of a novel doesn't read like the published version. The first version of a product isn't the one that wins awards. The first attempt at a speech, a performance, a relationship, or a workout often feels more like failure than success. And yet, those first versions are absolutely essential. We live in a culture obsessed with highlights. We see curated images, perfect videos, and carefully edited content. What we don't see are the rough beginnings, the failed experiments, and the countless hours of iteration behind the scenes. So when we start something new and it feels rough, we panic. We think something's wrong. We assume we're not talented or ready. We assume that if we were meant to do this, it would feel smoother, more natural, more successful. But that assumption is a lie. It's a distortion of reality that keeps people stuck. The truth is that rough starts are exactly where transformation begins. It's in the unrefined effort where the foundation for greatness is laid. Unrefined means real. It means you haven't pretended your way into something. It means you're doing the work instead of just talking about it. There's something honest about being in the messy middle, in the space where things are unclear and uncomfortable. That's where your instincts develop. That's where your voice becomes authentic. That's where you build the resilience that later looks like confidence. People admire confidence, but most don't realize that confidence is forged through unrefined repetition. It doesn't come from getting it perfect. It comes from showing up when it's still clumsy. There's also a huge advantage to starting small. When something is small and unrefined, it's flexible. You can change direction. You can experiment without high stakes. You can explore without pressure. That early stage is when creativity is at its peak, because the fear of failure hasn't fully taken hold yet. Once things grow and get noticed, you'll have more eyes on you. More expectations, more scrutiny, so the small, unrefined stage is actually a gift. It's where you're allowed to be curious. It's where the best ideas often surface, ideas that would never survive under the weight of perfectionism. Starting small also teaches humility. It forces you to slow down and earn your progress, and in that process, you start to separate your worth from your performance. You stop needing everything to look good right away. You learn to value effort over appearance. That mindset is what allows you to stay in the game longer, because when things don't go your way, and they often won't, you won't be shaken. You'll already know that the process is supposed to be messy. You'll stop interpreting struggle as a sign that you're failing and start seeing it as evidence that you're growing. The unrefined stage also strips away ego. When you're not trying to prove something to the world, you can focus on building something real. You stop needing approval because you're not performing. You're practicing. You're building skill, not status, and that's where mastery comes from. People who excel in their fields aren't the ones who skipped the awkward stage. They're the ones who embraced it, who stayed in it longer than anyone else, who kept refining when others gave up. There's a kind of quiet courage required to stay committed when the results aren't flashy. When your work doesn't yet match your vision, when you know where you want to go, but what you're producing doesn't feel close, that tension is painful, but it's productive. It's the stretch that makes growth possible. And if you keep showing up in that place, unrefined, unsure, but still moving forward, you start to notice progress, not in giant leaps, but in small shifts, in the way things start to feel a little smoother, in the way your instincts sharpen, in the way you recover faster when things don't go well. It's also in the unrefined stage that you discover your real motivations. Are you doing this because it looks good or because it means something to you? When nothing is impressive yet and there's no external reward, you have to rely on your own internal drive. That's when you find out if your reason is strong enough to carry you. If it is, that reason becomes the engine for everything that comes next. If it's not, the unrefined stage will feel unbearable. That's why it's such a powerful filter. It reveals the truth. Doubt kills progress more than failure ever will. Failure gets a bad reputation, but it's not the real enemy. Failure is feedback. It's movement. It means you tried something. It means you're in the game. Doubt, on the other hand, is what keeps you on the sidelines. It's what convinces you not to start. It's what tells you that your idea isn't ready, that you aren't qualified, that someone else would do it better. Doubt doesn't just slow you down, it stops you entirely. It makes you second guess every step until you're frozen, overthinking, overanalyzing, and playing out worst case scenarios in your mind instead of taking action. What makes doubt so dangerous is how convincing it sounds. It doesn't yell, it whispers, it uses logic. It tries to sound reasonable. It disguises itself as caution, as being realistic, as thinking things through. But what it's really doing is planting fear. Fear of being judged, fear of not being enough, fear of getting it wrong, and the more you listen to it, the more it grows. It becomes the lens you see everything through. Suddenly, every opportunity feels risky. Every step forward feels unsafe. Every challenge feels like proof that you don't have what it takes. Doubt creates a narrative, and once you start believing it, it becomes your reality. People think they're waiting for the right time or more confidence or better conditions, but often what they're really doing is listening to doubt. They're letting it run the show, and because doubt is so good at imitating rational thought, it feels justified. It feels smart, but nothing about staying stuck is smart. Nothing about withholding your talent or holding back your effort is wise. Doubt makes you shrink when you should be expanding. It makes you hesitate when you should be acting. It makes you retreat when you should be pushing forward. It rewrites your potential in smaller and smaller terms until all you're left with is regret. What's even more frustrating is that doubt usually shows up strongest when you're on the edge of growth. Right when you're about to try something new, speak up, apply for something, put yourself out there, that's when doubt goes loudest. That's not a coincidence, that's resistance. Because when you push through doubt, you change, you grow, and the part of you that's afraid of change will do everything it can to pull you back into comfort, even if that comfort is quietly killing your potential. Doubt isn't a sign you're doing something wrong. It's often a sign you're exactly where you need to be, on the edge of something important. But instead of recognizing that, most people back off. They take doubt as a stop sign instead of a signal to keep going. And every time you let doubt dictate your choices, it gets stronger. It becomes the default. It becomes your inner voice. The only way to weaken doubt is through action. You have to prove it wrong, not by arguing with it, but by moving anyway. By showing yourself what's possible. Doubt hates evidence. It thrives on uncertainty, but when you take action, you start gathering proof. Proof that you're capable, that you can learn, that you can recover, that you can keep going even when things are uncomfortable. You don't need to eliminate doubt to move forward. You need to recognize it for what it is, a signal that growth is near, a distraction from your real power, a test of your willingness to trust yourself. Everyone has doubt. The difference is that the people who grow don't listen to it. They hear it, but they move anyway. They feel it, but they don't let it lead. They know that confidence isn't the absence of doubt. It's the ability to act in spite of it. That's what builds strength. That's what builds clarity. Every time you move through doubt, you stretch what you believe about yourself. You expand your limits. You redefine what's possible. The truth is, most of what doubt tells you never happens. The worst case scenarios rarely play out, but the opportunities you miss because of doubt, those are very real. Those are the jobs you never applied for, the calls you never made, the things you never created, the chances you never took. Doubt doesn't just kill progress, it kills potential, it kills momentum, it keeps you trapped in a smaller version of your life. And the longer you stay there, the more normal it starts to feel, the more permanent it starts to seem, but it's not. Doubt is just a pattern, and patterns can be broken.